Deafrowe with Deafrowe TV, and I'm back again with another review. And this week's review is going to be the start of a six-part miniseries review. And the miniseries that I am reviewing is an older BBC series from 1996 called Neverwhere, written by Neil Gaiman himself. And it's one of my favorites, if I have to say so. I mean, it's kind of dated. I'll give it that. But the premise, the story is just so damn good that I felt like I needed to do an entire review of each episode of this miniseries Neverwhere from 1996. And let's get started on this review. But before I do, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Hit that notification bell so you can see episode 2 when I come out with next week. This week is going to be episode 1 called Door of Neverwhere, 1996. Let's get going. As you can see here, the character Richard Mayhew shows up at the very beginning of the show. He's kind of giving like this weird little interview at the beginning with his, fiance Jessica, or he calls her Jess, and she's always correcting him. It's Jessica. And yeah, they kind of like explain who they are, what his hobbies are, what he doesn't like, and what he does like, that kind of thing. And when I say it's dated in some respects, he talks about collecting his little treasure trolls things, which you kind of see on his desk later in this episode. But as you can see here, this is Gary Blackwell, or I said his last name wrong, Gary Bakewell, playing Richard Mayhew, and Elizabeth Marmor playing Jessica. And the other characters that you'll be seeing in this episode is Laura Fraser playing Door, Howell Bennett playing Mr. Croup, Clive Russell playing Mr. Vandemar, Trevor Peacock playing Old Bailey, and Patterson Joseph playing Marquis de Carabas, one of my favorite characters in this. And of course, let's get going, shall we? We start off with just basically him talking and stuff about life and how he's pretty much boring. And then we get the title sequence here, Neverwhere, with the episode 1, Door. And it starts off with Mr. Vandemar and Mr. Croup, and their little henchman here to the right of them is chasing after Door. And you come to find out later that these two, they pretty much killed off Door's family and is chasing after Door as the last remnant of this, I guess, the royal, somewhat of a royal family of London below. And basically, they've been contracted to kill him. Contracted by who? We don't know yet. But we just know they are trying to get Door and kill her at this point. And then, yeah. Then we cut back to Richard Mayhew, and he's showing his regular day in the office. As you see, all the little treasure troll dolls sitting around his desk here. And everything's just a little bit, even just little things that happen throughout the day are a little bit chaotic with him. He's just trying to basically be a person that he really is not. And of course, Jessica calls him at such a time and tells him like, "Hey, remember you got this appointment at 7, or we have this engagement at 7:30 tonight. Don't forget." And of course, anytime that's kind of a setup for them forgetting. Anyway, as you can see here, and you kind of look at this, you see a picture of Jessica on his desk, and when he's talking to Jessica, if I can get that right in here somewhere. Anyway, we cut back to Door, and she's sleeping. And she's still running away from those three guys. And one of the henchmen of one of the third guy, which we never have a name for, I never understood that. But he's trying to stab her while she's sleeping and misses her barely and just catches her arm instead. And then in self defense, she ends up killing him and getting away. as you can see here, leaving a big old pool of blood behind her. Then we cut back to Mayhew, and Jessica's calling him up to make him to remind him of the 7:30 engagement they have that night. And if you look at her desk at this point, I don't know if you can catch it. You see his desk. He has a picture of her on his desk. Now, you do see like a tiny, tiny little picture of him and her on her desk. Just a tiny little green picture there. But then she has that exact same picture he has on his desk on her desk as well, which is right there. And I mean, if you look right up underneath that picture, that little green frame underneath there is a picture of him and her. It's just very tiny, but she has picture, the exact same picture of her that he has on her desk. It's like it's a very self-absorbed person here. Let's put it that way. I don't know too many people that would have a solo picture of themselves on their desk at work. I mean, I can understand if you have a picture of yourself and your wife and your kids and that kind of stuff, or a combination of all of you together. But you're not going to just have a solo picture of yourself on your desk. Uh, I think it's kind of a way to point out the self absorption of her ego. But anyway, as we continue on, you see Doris still running away from Mr. Vandemar, Mr. Coop, or Croup. And we cut back to sees all the stupid treasure troll dolls. This the only thing that really dates this thing is the cell phones and the little treasure troll dolls. I mean, they're kind of creepy and odd looking things. Anyway, they're finally catching up with her. And then it was about 7, a little bit after 7, that one of Mayhew's friends in the office lets him know. It's like, "Hey, dude, it's after 7. Are you supposed to be here still?" And that's when Mayhew finally remembers, like, "No, I got obviously he forgot, and he's got to get to Jessica for that engagement at 7:30. And of course, he forgets his keys on the desk. Let's see if I can catch that bit here. Yeah, yeah, he forgets his keys at the desk and heads on his way out. Gets Jessica. They're going down the street here. And she's explaining to him, "I was like, you realize I'm so hard on you because I just want you to be a better version of yourself and all this other stuff. And basically, I think it's her own ego. Anyway, so Mr. Vandemar and Mr. Croup has cornered Floor at a wall, and Floor is trying to make the a door. I mean, a door, not Floor. Door is trying to make a door appear in front of her, but she's not able to do it. And they think that they have her cornered, but then they turn around and she's gone because apparently a door did open up for her, and she ends up right where Richard Mayhew is. You find out why later. And Richard, seeing her bloodied and everything, thinks he needs to help her. Jessica not being keen on doing that very thing, just wants him to leave her there, call the police, and let them deal with it. And so Jessica just leaves him there, and he picks up Dor and takes her back to his apartment because Dor tells him, don't take me to the hospital. It's not as bad as you think it is. I can heal very well. So yeah, so that's what she ends up doing. He goes back to there, basically covers her up and lets her sleep the night off. And that night, Richard Mayhew has like these weird nightmare, these dreams of this bull that's coming after him, and he's fighting it off. And he finally wakes up, and Dora's awake, and she's walking into the room, and he's like, what's going on? And Dora doesn't really understand where she is or how she got there, because apparently you find out later on she really can't open up a door to London above without a key. So she doesn't really understand how she was able to escape, and that's why she doesn't really believe Mayhew when he tells her that you're in London. And she looks out the window, it's like London above. It's like, yeah, it's London. He doesn't realize there's a London below. Um, and so, yeah, that whole ordeal goes down, and he's trying to figure out. She's talking almost in riddles about everything, and then realizing that the most of the blood that was on her shirt and her jacket and the rest of the stuff was blood from the guy that she had to defend herself from and killed when he stabbed her in the arm. So yeah. Anyway, the doorbell rings, and guess who's at the door? But no, none other than Mr. Vanderbar and Mr. Croup, who has decided to sniff out where Door is, and judging from the smell of Mr. Vanderbar's sense of smell, they follow the smell to Mayhew's apartment and act like Door's brothers that are just looking for their sister that has run away. And of course, he's not buying any of it. Mayhew's not. These two just come off creepy as crap anyway. Especially with Mr. Vandermar here doing this little thing where like he's got these weird ass rings on his finger, and he's like a little nutty. He tries to explain that Door's a little bit nutty, but Mayhew doesn't really believe him. Tells him to get out, because they're trying to search his house without him knowing, and he figures out what they're doing. And then, of course, Mayhew talks to Door about this, and he's like, what's going on here? These two people said they were your brothers. Like, no, they're the furthest thing from a brother. And so, so Dora realizing that Mr. Croup and Mr. Vandemar are on her trail, figures they got to get a message to somebody that can help her. And she figures the best way to send a message is just to get a pigeon and send a message. And Mayhew is like, you realize this is just a regular pigeon, right? This is not a homing pigeon of any sort. It's like, well, the pigeon will still know what to do. And it's like she's speaking to the pigeon, and the pigeon knows exactly what it's supposed to do. So they send the pigeon off with a message to the Marquis de Carabas, played by Patrick Joseph, obviously. And throughout this whole thing, Dora is trying to explain to Richard, you know, don't ask too many questions. Try not to get too involved. You really don't want to do that. And of course, Mayhew, every time she says something like that, he applies, tries to seek out more answers. So yeah, the pigeon, ends up in a little place in an alleyway to send the message off, and it's like this little dump area. And you're wondering like, well, what's this got to do with anything? Anyway, and we cut back to Mayhew and Dora, and they're just sitting there, like, wondering, like, Mayhew's like, well, what are we supposed to be waiting on? And she's like, well, we're waiting on a response. And then they finally get a response, but it's in the form of a rat showing up with a note on the back of its back. And Mayhew at first throws the remote control down at it, thinking it's just a regular rat that's just, found its way into his apartment. And she's like, "No, you idiot! It's the messenger." And so the rat comes around the corner, gives him the message, and she makes Floor. Oh, not Floor. I keep wanting to say Floor. Door makes Mayhew apologize to the rat for scaring him, and Mayhew, going along with everything, just apologizes to the rat, for scaring him. And the rat's like arguing with Door. It's like, does he really mean that? And all this other stuff. And so they get the message back from to Carabas, and she decides to send Mayhew off with a note to meet the Marquis de Carabas to give him a message. So now that she sent out a message for help, there was a reply to the message, and now Mayhew is going to meet the Marquis de Carabas to make, I guess, like an offer. So he goes down the alleyway and he has to turn a certain way so many times counterclockwise and say something. I can't remember exactly, but he does it and then throws the note off. He doesn't think anything's really going to happen. He's kind of just like skeptical of the whole thing. Throws the note, and then of course Marquis de Carabas catches the note. It's like, yes, that's mine. Then he goes like, so you're Richard Mayhew, the one who saved our door from being killed. And he goes on to explain that Dora and her relatives can all heal very fast, which makes him wonder how they were able to kill the rest of her family. He's, basically telling Richard, like, all of her family is dead except for her. And Mayhew's like, I didn't know all that was going on. And so he's kind of getting freaked out about the whole thing. And then Marquis de Carabas is like, tell me exactly what she said to you. What was the offer? And Mayhew just said she just said she would make she would owe you big time. Is basically owe you a big one. And he said, oh really? That's what she said. Okay, that's good enough for me. And so like the whole ordeal is basically he takes Dora up on the offer of owing a big favor. Apparently that means a lot in the London below. And so doing so, Marquis de Carabas then sets up his plan. And this is where you kind of see him right here, bringing Richard Mayhew along and showing like what he's fixing to do. He's got to set things up in a certain way where he knows he's going to come out of the other end of this alive. And so he seeks out the Old Bailey, which owes him a very big favor. So they take this little weird pathway through the underground and these tunnels and then up to the ladder and all this stuff, and they come out on this little area on the top of a roof somewhere, about to fall off the side. Like, oh crap! And then that's when you finally get to meet the Old Bailey here, played by Trevor Peacock. And he's suspicious of Richard Mayhew because he's never seen him before. But then he asks why the Marquis de Carabas is there, and it's like, you should know I've come to call in my big favor. He said I was a fool to offer you such a favor. I said, well, that, nothing's better than an old fool. And so he basically gives the Old Bailey this little metal box. You don't really know what's going on in this little metal box or whatever, but he just tells Old Bailey he's got to hold on to this until it's needed. And then he's like, okay, now on to door. And so they make their way again through the tunnels and all these little, you know, entryways and stuff. And then they end up somehow back at Richard Mayhew's apartment through these little ins and outs of all these little tunnels and stuff. And Richard's like, I have no clue how he got there. And so yeah. So they ends up back over at the apartment where Dora has been staying, hiding from Mr. Croup and Mr. Vandermar. And like I said, throughout this whole thing, Dora's like, look, you know, you don't have to do anything. And of course, the Marquis de Carabas like bows to her like she's a princess of some sort. And Dora turns around to Mayhew and just tells her, like, this you finally you did everything I asked you to do. Just don't go any further. This is where our paths end with each other. And so they leave. They just kind of disappear right there at the front door, leaving Mayhew just kind of confused, whatever. Well, the next day, Mayhew goes, he thinks he's going to go back to his regular life, go back to work and everything. But on the way to work, he can't even call a taxi. Nobody is even acknowledging that he's standing right there in the middle of traffic trying to call a taxi. Then he gets to the office and notices they're moving his desk somewhere. And he's like, "What's going on here?" And then as he's trying to talk to everybody in the office about what's going on, nobody's answering him. And he goes so far as to try to talk to one of his only friends in the office, and he's not even paying attention to him either. He goes so far as to turn his phone off. And then finally, the friend sees him there, but the friend doesn't recognize him. He's like, and the friend just tells him his name and says, may I help you with something?" And the way the look on his face, as you can see here, is like he's looking through him almost. Pretty good acting, by the way. Uh, but yeah, so like people are not seeing Mayhew, and he's like getting freaked out. It's like I don't exist to these people anymore. Then he finally goes to Jessica, and as you can see here, like I pointed out earlier, she's got that picture of her, but she had that smaller green picture of him and her below that picture, and then that picture no longer is there. And on top of that, he's talking to Jessica, and Jessica doesn't know who he is. But he thought for sure that she would know because she left a message on his phone the day before saying the engagement's off and all this other stuff because leaving her right before the thing at 7:30 to go take care of some homeless person that just happened to show up with blood on her. So yeah, so then Mayhew he can't find anybody that is listen to him, understand him, and or even see him for that matter. And he goes back home, and the landlord is there at his house on the phone talking to somebody over the phone, saying like, "Look, yeah, this apartment will be ready in 3 days, and we'll have a new tenant here. We just got to move out all this guy's stuff that kind of just got left here." And Mayhew's sitting there yelling at him, like, telling him like, "I'm right here," but nobody's nothing. Then that's when Mayhew finally realizes, so this is what Dora was talking about. This is why she didn't want me to get caught up in all this, is because now that I've had experience in London below and I've dealt with it, I'm disappearing from the place above. He doesn't know what's really going on, but he's like freaking out, and he's starting to understand. But this is what Dora kind of warned him about, and why he shouldn't have gotten involved with the whole ordeal. Anyway, he gets a phone call on his cell phone, and it's Mr. Croup and Mr. Vandemar. And they're sitting there basically, you know, what you call it, threatening him, but not really threatening him. Mr. Croup goes on to tell him, like, we don't make threats, we make promises. The keep goes on like, do you know what your own liver tastes like? And like making weird comments and stuff like, we want to kill you if you get in our way, basically. So that's when Richard, he's kind of had enough of this crap, and he gathers up as much of his belongings that he thinks he should take with him, puts it in a bag, and starts heading down to basically like trying to retrace his steps with the Marquis de Carabas and try to find his way into that area what Dora was talking about with London Below, because he wants to fix what's happened to him. Well, as he's at the ATM machine trying to get money out, and all of a sudden the ATM machine just shows up as invalid account does not exist, of course, because. But then this homeless man comes up to him, and is like, "Hey, you got change for a coffee or whatever?" And Mayhew realizes, wait a minute, you can see me. How is it you can see me and nobody else can see me and I can't do anything? And then the homeless man kind of freaks out when he starts talking about the floating market and the door. It's like there's just information that Mayhew should not know, being somebody from above. And Mayhew's like, "Come on, man, just help me." And then the homeless man leads him down into the London below, but just on the outskirts. And then that's where you meet this guy here. He comes out of they take his jacket, and they're like, who are you and what do you know about the London Below and Door and all this other stuff? Talk, talk, talk. And then this is Sean. Oh, Sean Gallaghan. If I say the name wrong, I'm sorry, but this is Lord Rat Speaker. Anyway, they're kind of like at the entry of London Below. Anyway, and he's like, oh, he's telling me about the floating market in Door. He's talking about stuff he shouldn't know about. It's like, well, I brought him down to you to see if you can deal with him. He's like, I know how to deal with him, and then he pulls a knife out and puts it to his throat, and then that ends episode one. Leaves you a little bit of a cliffhanger right here. Yep. And the outro music for this entire series really is just awesome. I love the music in this thing. So if you get a chance to watch the show, if you want to get ahead of me or whatever and watching the show, go on. It's out there on Pluto, the TV, Pluto TV, the app. You can watch it out there for free with commercials, obviously. And it's definitely worth buying, in my opinion, if you just want to have the DVD copies of it, which I have. But yeah, so honestly, love this episode. It's a good start off, and it leaves you with a little bit of a cliffhanger at the end of the episode. So like, oh crap, I gotta see what happens to him, kind of deal. And then, so yeah, that's my review for episode one, Door of Neverwhere. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you be ready to watch episode two coming out next week. Thank you. And this is me, Deafrowe, out.